Good evening and welcome to Pac-12 After Dark. I am Erik Coleman here with Coach Nick Aliotti, here to break down all things happening in the Pac-12. Well, Coach, I guess we're talking about one game, the sort of the Pac-12 championship. Washington State goes down to Corvallis to face Oregon State, and Oregon State wins in a thriller off of the leg of Everett Hayes on a 55-yard field goal. Coach, that was a great game. What are your initial thoughts on the performance?
I absolutely loved this football game today. I thought it was a fantastic college football game, and it went down to the wire. I thought both teams played uh, good offensively. I thought both teams struggled defensively, really, but it was a classic football game. It's tough to win in Corvallis, and I thought all week going to Corvallis would be a tough one, even though they'd been a little bit on a slide. But real thoroughly enjoyed the game. I thought Branson had he threw a couple picks that were very costly. Let's face it, but him being the quarterback in that game for the most part, I know they changed it up with Johnson, was a huge, huge difference for Oregon State because they had the passing threat and the running threat, and Walker was outstanding for Oregon State as a receiver.
I agree with you, Coach. Offensively, it was a great, pretty good performances by both teams. Branson had a phenomenal game, particularly in the first half. I thought he played very well. He was very efficient, finding Trent Walker, as well as Jermaine Terry. Jermaine Terry was a big factor in today's game as well. He was dominant catching the ball against those safeties. I thought he was great in the matchup. Anthony Hankerson did a good job of keeping the chains moving. That offensive line of Oregon State, I thought, did a good job of dominating the front of Washington State. And yeah, it was back and forth for most of the game. It seemed like in the second half, Washington State came out with their mind made up on putting the ball in John Mateer's hands, letting him run the football, keep those chains moving, create those big plays, and that's what he did. I mean, he's been phenomenal all season long, and I thought that he was very efficient today. But at the end of the day, Branson, even with his 2 interceptions, was victorious. I thought that this offense for the Oregon State Beavers looks completely different with him at the helm. They're a dual threat offense. They can run the football as well as threaten you down the field, which is something that they couldn't do at the beginning of the season. So good to see Oregon State playing a top-notch quality of football.
Mateer, again, had a very good football game. I think he accounted for 4 touchdowns, maybe 5, but 4 for sure. He continues to be uh, the straw that stirs the drink there for Washington State. He's been incredible. And Ryan Leaf said something on air today that I actually agree with. John Mateer might be the best college football quarterback this year. He really might be when you think of the stats and what he's meant to his football team. I think Mateer's been fabulous. Washington State, we've talked about this. We've talked about 2 things all year. Oregon State without a passing game was a team that could not play from behind and could not threaten you down the field. Well, they had that today. We talked about Washington State struggling on defense. And again, they gave 41 points up to a team that I think has scored 20 points total in their last 3 games. So, Washington State's had a good season. They're going to go to a nice bowl game. But they don't have a good enough defense when it's all said and done to be one of those teams that we would have and might have been talking about for the college football playoff.
Yeah, I agree with you, Coach. And at the beginning of the season, it's okay. You can outshoot those teams. With your offense, you can rely on them putting up a lot of points. But as you get down the stretch, as it starts to get cold, as defenses start to figure out your offense and slow them down a little bit, it's got to be your defense stopping the run, stopping the big plays, and that's been an Achilles heel for Washington State. They haven't been able to do either one of those. No matter what team they're playing against, it seems like they're just continuing to give up big plays. And yes, they did create a couple of big plays. Ethan O'Connor had a timely interception, didn't lead to any points. Buda Auda had a great pick 6, and I liked his moves at the end to get the touchdown. That was very helpful for Washington State because if you take those 2 turnovers away, it seemed like Oregon State was scoring touchdowns on every single drive, and that's just not sustainable. That's not how you win. That's not how you play championship football. So Washington State has a little bit to learn from. They have to grow on that defensive side of the ball, and offensively, what a heartbreaker! Kyle Williams had a phenomenal game. I thought that he was making a lot of big plays. He's had a great year, and for him to have that fumble at the end of the game to give the ball back to Oregon State and eventually lead to their field goal to win the game is heartbreaking. I feel for Kyle Williams. He was giving it the best he had, and unfortunately, the ball rolled in Oregon State's favor, and they were able to come out victorious in the first Pac-12. Oregon State versus Washington State matchup. Great game.
You know, it seemed like Oregon State, I don't know what it ended up statistically, but Oregon State had a lot of third and manageable for a first down. In fact, there were a number of times Branson just ran on a quarterback sneak. They had a number, they were ahead of the chains most of the night, which makes it very easy for your offense. And the other thing that I felt, I'm not a second guess guy. And I want everybody out there to know this. We are pulling for Washington State and Oregon State. We are pulling for this Pac-12, which was the two teams this year. But we got to be real. I was curious about the timeouts by Washington State at the end of the game because I personally thought, well, they're going to kick a 50-something yard field goal anyway, but why give them time to settle down and make them hurry with everything they had to do, particularly when they were out of timeouts? I mean, even if they caught a ball in bounds for not a first down, they would have had to rush on the field, line up, and kick that. In this situation, they were able to take their time and kick the field goal. So I understand a little bit, but I was curious about those timeouts at the end of the game. I would have made Oregon State rush and have a little bit more pressure on them.
Yeah, I agree. I think some of that comes from last week when Coach Dicker was scrutinized a little bit for his clock management at the end of that game against New Mexico. So, those clock management situations are tough. There's a lot of coaches that make big bucks to make those right decisions and to have their team prepared for those end of the game scenarios. But at the end of the day, Oregon State was a better team. They played well down in Corvallis. Just great all-around win for the Beavers. I thought they outplayed Washington State, although Washington State did come up with some big plays. The Cougs, I'm happy for Trent Brea. This team has gone through a lot this season, and they're able to come back in the season, on a high note. They have one more game left. They're going to play Boise State, but to beat Washington State in that first Pac-12 head-to-head matchup is a big win for the Beavs. So make sure you stick in with us because when we come back, we're going to talk about who the Beavs and the Cougs face next week to wrap up their regular seasons here on the Pac-12 Network. So stay tuned to Pac-12 After Dark. Welcome back to Pac-12 After Dark. Coach Nick Aliotti, Erik Coleman here. Just got done talking about that thriller in Corvallis as Oregon State defeated Washington State on a last-second 55-yard field goal by Everett Hayes of Oregon State. Great win for the Beavers at home to bounce back. But now let's get into next week's action. Washington State playing a Wyoming team at home, trying to bounce back from 2 losses in a row. Coach, what are the keys for Washington State to come back and end on a positive note, in that regular season on a positive note, facing a Wyoming team that's 2-9, but just got done with a very good performance against Boise State? They came up short, but they lost to Boise State 17-13, holding Ashton Jeanty to under 200 yards, which not many people have been able to do this season.
Yeah, I think Washington State, Erik, playing at home, they're 8-3 now. They're going to go to a good bowl game. 9-3, probably a little bit better bowl game. But they've had a nice season. I know they want to end on a winning note. I think playing at home with the crowd behind them and John Mateer rocking and rolling the way he has, I think, and they're a different offense than Boise because they can run it enough with Mateer, although I don't think they run it great. Once in a while, Sean Parker and some of those guys get loose. But with Mateer and their passing game, that's a different animal to defend than Wyoming defending Boise. So I think playing at home with their offense, and then Wyoming offensively, I don't think they have quite the weapons. They've struggled to score points most of the year. They're 2-9. So I feel good, although I felt good about Washington State going down to New Mexico too. But I feel good about Washington State ending 9-3 on the regular season at home against Wyoming.
Yeah, overall, I think it's been a phenomenal season for Washington State. Obviously falling short, losing two in a row, two disappointing losses for the Cougs. But overall, you have to look at this season as a victory for Washington State. We got some things to improve on defense. I think next week is a great opportunity for them to step up defensively, gain that confidence going into the bowl season. Now, let's talk about Oregon State coming off an impressive victory against Washington State. They played the Boise State Broncos, who are rolling right now. Heisman Trophy candidate Ashton Jeanty has been running all over the field on everyone this season, and Boise State is one of the top teams, number 12 right now in the country. What is Oregon State? What is their mentality coming into this game, playing against a team that's probably going to be in the top 10 after some of those losses this week? Great running game. They have all the momentum in the world right now. If you're the Beavers, what's your mindset?
If I'm the Beavers, I now have an opportunity to go to a bowl game. I'm 5-6. Now we're going to play a tough Boise State team uh, in Boise, which is not going to be easy. But they should be feeling really good, Erik, after tonight's win. They found some magic with Gobranson. We know they can run the ball. I think they'll have the same recipe offensively. The problem is, will they have enough hats to stop the run against Jeanty and that Bronco running attack? I don't think Boise has a great running attack. I'm sorry, passing attack, and I think they're going to try to feature the run. So if I'm Oregon State, I am practicing tackling as best I can, gap control, very sound defense against the run, and then eyes right with the secondary on my receivers, not to get fooled, and just try to make Boise State drive the ball offensively and give up no explosions. Because I think after what I saw tonight, Oregon State with the healthy Go Branson and Hankerson, the way he's running it, I and Walker the way he's playing, and Terry having a breakout, I think they'll be fine offensively. They got to find a way to control the Bronco offense.
I agree. And if you're Trent Bray, you've got to be studying this Wyoming film of what they did to slow down the Boise State offense. Uh, Wyoming was able to make Boise State be one dimensional, only running the football. Madsen threw the ball 14 for 26 for only 168 yards. Ashton Jeanty had a big run, 61-yard touchdown run in the first quarter. But things were slow after that. He had 19 carries. He did average 8.9 yards per carry after that, but Boise State was unable to put points on the board until the fourth quarter. So I think that if you're Trent Bray, you're watching Boise State's defense. You're watching how they attacked. You're watching Wyoming's defense and how they attacked Boise State to give you a leg up on next week's action.